All right, I don't know if I'm going to be able to say his name right, but I'm going to give it a try. I think it's David Linthicum, without even reading it. David Linthicum is the dissemination chair of the UAI. He's responsible for getting the books all over the place, and he's going to give us an amazing presentation right now. So can you give our brother a huge round of applause?
The theme of this conference is Jesus as a teacher. And as Mo reminded us, Jesus is actually a master teacher. This should come as no surprise because Jesus was born on paradise. He's a divine son. He had a perfectly balanced personality. He was a perfect mix of humanity and divinity. And he lived his life in accordance with the Father's will. He lived a perfect life. His teachings actually changed the world. It led to the formation of the Christian church, which spread his word throughout the whole world. One of the most important things I think that Jesus left us was that he changed our perception of God. Changed it from the God of Moses, who is angry and vengeful, to a God of love, a father of us all, and taught us that we are his children. And how precious is that? To know that he loves us, each and every one. He holds none of us in favor over the other. Regardless of our age, our sex, our gender, our race, we are all equal in his eyes. He is our loving Father, and he adores his children. Jesus' message was not all that complicated. It was actually really quite simple. He talked about love, talked about family, and he talked about faith. He also talked about a new relationship with God. He made it more personable. He told us about a God who's more understanding, who is sympathetic to our struggles in life. How comforting is that to know that he actually lives this life with us. He resides right here, this close. We don't have to go searching for him. He has already found us. And probably the most important thing that Jesus taught was that by faith alone, you are saved. It wasn't a complicated message. And we should not complicate our message to our friends and families either. His teachings were perfectly suited for the times in which he lived. Over 2,000 years ago, he was able to deftly weave his divine insight, his higher knowledge, into the fabric of the beliefs of the people of those times, and has transcended to meld into the times we live today. He was very skillful in the way that he presented his teachings. He knew what to say to the people, but probably most importantly, he knew what not to say. So what can we learn from the teachings of Jesus today, in the times that we live? What can we take from his teachings that will instruct us as we try to interact with our fellows, as we reach out to our family and friends? What do we say? What do we not say? That really is the big question. How do we talk about the book without sounding crazy? Shall we spread the truth by parables, as Jesus taught the multitudes? Have you ever tried writing a parable? It's not an easy thing to do. Should we use the parables that Jesus used as an illustration? They're very powerful if those who have an ear to hear. Would the message get through? Perhaps. There's a lot of information in the Urantia book, as you all well know. We learned all the details about paradise, where it resides, its size, its shape, the energies that emanate out of paradise and back into it. We learned of the universe of universes, 1 billion perfect spheres that surround paradise. We learned that there's 7 super universes, word of ascending and descending sons of God, orders of angels that were beyond our imagination. And one of the things that I found so comforting was to know that the universe is exquisitely managed. It's not chaotic. It's not helter-skelter. God has a plan, and he works it perfectly. And of course, we have part 4, the life and teachings of the Master. We'll do a quick survey. By show of hands, how many of you have just been introduced to the book, but you haven't really read it yet? Or maybe this is your first conference. 1? That's about a dozen people. Excellent. Now, when I say who's read it one time, I'm meaning cover to cover. Who's read it one time, cover to cover? Just one time. Okay. How many read it 3 times, cover to cover? 6 times? 12 or more? Overachievers. Okay, I got it. What this illustrates is that we have a wide variety. We have a diversity of understanding. We have a diversity of knowledge. Just because you've read the book 12 times or you've been reading it for 50 years, as we've learned today, doesn't mean that we're any smarter or any more spiritual than the person who's read it one time. So we should bear that in mind as we go about our lives and in the breakout sessions that we have. I have another question. How many of you have attempted to give the book to a family or friend? I'm not going to ask you how many were successful. But I want to tell you my story. And perhaps you've had the same experience. I found the book in 1996. And it took me about a year to read the darn thing. But after I had finished it, I was excited, to say the least. I had found something that was beyond my wildest imagination. My first instinct was to tell my best friend what I had found. So I went out and bought him a book. And one day I handed it to him and said, "You've got to read this." He's like, "Yeah, right, okay." Well, my buddy and I had read the books of Carlos Castaneda, J.R.R. Tolkien, and we really enjoyed sharing as we read those books together. But it didn't work out the way I'd hoped. I found out my friend never read the book. He was a science teacher. I would try to entice him with some of the science in the book. Yeah, that didn't work either. I found out later, years later, when I finally put it to him bluntly, "Why haven't you read this book?" His wife told him when she looked at it, it was the work of the devil. It broke my heart. Truly did. Now, in my own defense, I just read the book once. I didn't know anything about Urantia Foundation. I never attended a study group, didn't know there were study groups. And I never met another Urantia book reader. So I'm just a rookie out there, all excited, all pumped up, and zealous. Now, 20 years later, over the years, I'm the stubborn type. I kept trying the same thing over and over. Here, read the book, read the book, read the book. To all my friends, my family. And same result. I was reminded of a quote. To do the same thing over and over and expect a result is what? It's insanity. So I had to find a different way to go about things. So I started, when people would ask me about the book, I would say, for me, it's a book of answers. It answered every question I had about religion, about God, about creation, about angels, about the devil. Most importantly, I learned about life after death. I came away with an assurance and self-confidence that I had a place in God's creation. I always thought there was more to heaven than just sitting around playing a harp. I mean, Heaven's supposed to be perfect. But I don't care. After 100 years, 1,000 years, 1,000,000 years, that's going to get kind of boring. We're going to need some other challenges. And then I found that God does have a plan. He's made provisions for us to grow in spirit, to seek new opportunities and adventures that we cannot even imagine today, even with what we know. I learned that God has a plan. He is our Father, that He wants us to grow. He wants us to experience adventure. And He created a vast universe to allow us to do just that. And that's what I leave it when people ask me about the book. I don't tell them about the book. I tell them about my experience. And if they have questions, I said, you might find answers to your questions in this book as well. A couple of years ago, I was asked to give a workshop. The theme was Jesus, the Master Teacher. I'd never given a workshop before, so I went back and I looked at part 4 and the teachings of Jesus, trying to come up with an idea for the topic of my workshop. And it dawned on me. I'm going to call it the eyedropper, the spoon, and the shovel. The concept came to me thinking about how Jesus taught the common people, how He taught the apostles. What stood out to me was not so much what He taught, but what He did not teach. For instance, Jesus told the apostles that in my Father's house there are many mansions. On other occasions, He said, I have sheep not of this fold. Now, these utterances are not strange to us because we know the background. We know the history. We know what He was talking about. But can you imagine the apostles' confusion? Or the look on their faces, the whispers? What the heck is He talking about? Can you imagine what would have happened if He had actually revealed more? If He had said that my Father resides on paradise and surrounded by 1 billion perfect worlds, populated by perfect beings that I created. And it's called the Central Universe. It's Havona. And outside of Havona is 7 super universes. And then there's a first outer space level, a second outer space level, a third outer space level, and a fourth outer space level. Can you imagine? Or, instead of saying that I have sheep not of this fold, Jesus had said, you know, our world resides in what is called the 7th super universe, in the local universe of Nebadon. Your world that we live on resides in the system of Satania. It contains over 600 inhabited worlds, and I am the creator of it all. And my sheep have 1 brain, 2 brains, or 3 brains. The apostles' minds, they would have thought he was beside himself. Or they thought him just plain out crazy. Would they have followed him? Instead, Jesus tempered what he said. He used an eyedropper of truth here and there. He whet their appetites. To illustrate his teachings, he revealed truth by the spoonful. And when the people were ready, he did not shovel too much at them. He might have got a larger spoon, but he didn't overwhelm them. So what can we learn from Jesus? We can use the eyedropper, the spoon, and the shovel approach ourselves when we desire to reveal new truths. There's much that we can learn from Jesus' approach that can help us to be better teachers and leaders. As we explore Jesus as a teacher, let's bear in mind that Jesus was careful in revealing truth. Now, when Nathanael asked for additional truth, he took him aside and he gave him additional truth. But then he cautioned him, tell no man. Nathanael did not. because he knew that Nathanael was ready for additional truth. So always consider your audience and what their capacity is for revealed truth. Remember the moda expression. Spiritual capacities cannot be exceeded. A pint can never hold a quart. So as you go forth in your travels, remember to bring the eyedropper, the spoon, but leave the shovel at home. If someone desires a book, give them one and let them get their own shovel and dig for the truths that it contains. Thank you.